Hello, welcome back to Season 2 of the Appraisd podcast, Navigating Performance Management, your compass to HR success. And on today's episode, we are joined by Rachel Townend, Chief of Staff at Illuminate Financial. Rachel assumed the role of Chief of Staff at the company in 2021, overseeing Illuminate's strategic objectives in relation to people, process, and operations. And after 15 years in the financial sector in London, Rachel brings a wealth of experience and expertise to her leadership role. Rachel has a passion for early stage businesses and helping them grow. In this episode, we really wanted to talk about recognition, and in particular, how to ensure that people's hard work is recognized effectively, regardless of how outspoken or willing to blow their own trumpet they may be. So to address this, we wanted to share with you Illuminate Financial's take on recognizing their people at work and creating a culture that celebrates people and the things that they do that make a difference. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Now, we had a fantastic chat the other week about this, so I know that this is going to be real interest to many of our customers and listeners. So, and all around the topic of recognition and reward. So let's crack on. Okay, I'm going to kick off with some questions, if that's all right. I mean, I think the first one is, can you just explain, give us an overview of what Illuminate Financial's Excellence Awards are? And how did this get started? What was the kind of need that drove this?
Yeah, so we've got a set of four, we call them prestigious awards, which is a bit of a joke, but they're to recognise our team and the fantastic job that they do and our collective success. So it's not about one individual person, it's about the team. They also kind of embody all of our company values. They're fun, they are a bit jokey, they are uplifting, they're energizing, and they're something that people look forward to. So they started in about 2015. So the company started about 10 years ago. And we were all in a London office together, which now we're between 3 different geographies. So we've got all the joys of different locations. But at the time, we were all in London. And one of the partners just put a simple poster up in the kitchen that just said excellence, Einstein, PD, and always be on time, which is super important. Yeah. And we talk about sort of great artist steel, and I think he'd come from a consultancy background, and he'd come across something similar in the past about recognizing people. And from this poster, we had a couple of other ones as well, Everything is Awesome, which is a sort of one from the Lego movie. And now we have the Ted Lasso Believe one and little things like that, which are just fun things that are around. But from this, we then created these awards, and the awards are Excellence, Einstein, Guardian of PD, and more recently, the Numpty Award. So the Excellence Award is for anything that's kind of over and beyond. It pushes Illuminate forward. You know, it's the kind of rock star award, and it really embodies our values. The Einstein Award is something that's particularly clever or innovative. And then the Guardian of PD is very much about teaching, motivating, feedback, and kind of, recognizing each other. And then the Numpty Award came along because we all make mistakes. And so we felt that one was really important because it's such a core part of our culture to sort of learn from them. So when these started, we were all in the same office, and so there was no Zoom. We were all there in the room, and we'd have a speaker, we'd put some music on, and we would have nominations and silly prizes. This also came with a kind of presentation that had photos of the last quarter. So a really good way to kind of remember what you have done in the last quarter, because I think as you get busier and busier, it's very easy to forget. When we first started the business, when we did a deal, we'd all have a glass of champagne or a fizzy drink of some kind and really celebrate that. And then as you go along, these wins, which when you were small were huge, seem less because you've got so much other stuff going on, but they're still really important. And so, right from the beginning, we wanted to make sure that we did, stop and recognize each quarter all of the fantastic stuff that had happened along the way.
Amazing. Okay, so the first thing to sort of point out is obviously this really came from the top, right? This was led by one of the partners who
Yeah.
really see that the kind of the value in doing this kind of recognition and having these awards. And I love the categories that you've got. You know, they, like you say, they're really fun. They really reflect the character of the organization, the culture, right, that you've got going on there, and they kind of amplify it rather than sort of trying to add anything that isn't really there, you know, or kind of be contrived or anything like that, which is really fantastic. You know, sometimes you walk into an office and you see these values written up on the wall, but actually people, even though they might have been there for months, people don't always know what they are. But this sounds really kind of like, you know, it's really kind of true to the character of the organization, which I really love. Tell us a bit more about the Numpty Award.
Yeah, so that's probably one of our favorite ones, and often doesn't get allocated to an individual because there's quite a few people, and it's self-nominated as well as other people nominating. And I think that one of the most important things about this award is you've got the founder, you've got the partners all putting their hand up saying, you know, I'm a numpty, I've made this mistake. And some of them, you know, can be sort of, I don't want to say serious, but, you know, they can be things that you really didn't want to do. And then a lot of them are then quite funny, but the whole organization is putting their hand up and saying, you know, this is what happened to me this quarter. So we've had some really, really great ones where, you know, just for a few examples for you, we use Bamboo HR for hiring, and I'd been doing some training with the team and we'd created some roles, and one of the team had created the zookeeper. And so, you know, it was just for training. Then before you know it, when we actually then do some hiring, the zookeeper role goes up online. And it's there for anybody to come and join Illuminate as a zookeeper. So, you know, one person's putting their hand up saying, oh, Numpty Award. On another occasion, I was putting an out of office for somebody who'd left, to sort of say they left the business. And I managed to do it for myself. So then there was a whole period of time where my out of office was going out saying I'd left the company. And, you know, we've all done it where we've sent emails to the wrong people or all those sorts of things. And you know, it's just how do you learn from it, but also how do you not bury these mistakes? And I think it's really important. And the guardian of PD, it's kind of, you know, if somebody comes to town, if you're a sort of tour guide for them, if you're doing a teach-in, you know, you're onboarding somebody. Like some people may say this is a part of your day-to-day job, but it's about recognizing your team and the people around you and the visibility piece, because as you get a bigger team, you don't always see what everybody's doing. And so you might not realize all this fantastic work they've done. And especially in different roles, different personalities, remote working, you know, bigger teams, all that sort of thing. And I was listening to one of the previous podcasts that you've done with Tom Blake, and he's saying, you know, recognition in the moment. And for sort of particularly the younger team members, but actually, I think it's really important for everyone. I think about, you know, founders and mental health problems and how lonely it can be at the top, right to the bottom where you're saying you've got more junior people needing a lot more feedback on an ongoing basis. And then particular roles, you know, chief of staff role can be quite lonely because you've got less of a team around you. And so every different position, you know, they need that recognition. It's a real kind of buzz, and it's lovely to do it as a team. I think Appraisd is great for the feedback, but that tends to be, you know, between the individual and maybe their manager, whereas this is the whole company getting together to have a celebration, which obviously now is in person and Zoom, which is not quite as good as having everyone in the room. But once a year we do an annual offsite, and then everybody's in the room together as well.
Okay, makes sense. And yeah, I think everyone's sort of grappling with this. Still grappling with how do we manage a kind of hybrid workforce, and how do we do those sort of celebratory things that are where you've got this, there's something different about having everybody in the room. And obviously, you get together once a year, which is fantastic, but also you've grown as an organization. You've managed to keep the culture of celebrate, or reinforce the culture of celebration of success and recognition as you've grown, despite kind of hybrid, partly remote workforce, which is really amazing. But tell us a little bit. I don't want to kind of blow our own trumpet, but I'd love to hear a little bit more, and other listeners might be interested to hear how you've used the technology to kind of support this process.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when it started, it was very much emailing once a quarter. Some people are sort of on the side were making a note of their nominations as they went. But then there was an email that went out that said, can you give your nominations for these 4 awards? And then that was all put into a PowerPoint and then obviously presented by the 2 partners. And they would choose, they would do the final kind of decision about who the winners were as such. And I have to say that the prizes are, a little toy unicorn and an Einstein with paper clips on his head. There's no monetary value. There's, you give the prize back at the end when it comes to the next person. So, that's part of the joy of it. That's hence the jokey nature of it. So when we got appraised, I thought, your feedback function is fantastic. And I thought, is there a way that we can do something similar with the Excellence Awards? And so one of the reasons we use Appraisd is because you've always been so adaptable. And when I kind of ask for changes and things, generally they can be accommodated, which is just fantastic. And so I was able to get a button that sort of says nominate Excellence Award. So, people log in, they go to that button and then they select which award and which person, and then they can put a note. And so that happens, throughout the quarter. We'll do some reminders, nearer the presentation time because people always forget. And then we will then pull that into an Excel file. And then we will kind of, then still move that across to PowerPoint just because that's the presentation. We have a sort of template we use for the awards. But it's been a great way to do it. I think this is always evolving for us because as you get a bigger team, there's always challenges. We now have kind of so many nominations. It's a high quality problem, but people do really engage with it. And so we are constantly, trying to work out different ways. We did have a period where it was going up on a whiteboard in the office, which in a way is really lovely because you see them as it goes up and it's very visible. But again, you run out of space on the whiteboard and we are in the different geographies and things like that. So it's been really good to have it all in one place in Appraisd and also just be able to kind of look back at the fantastic nominations. And I was looking before this and sort of smiling at some of the things. It's a really nice way to track the past as well, because even just the photographs, it's very easy for everyone to take photos and then what happens with them. Yeah. We'll do that in personal life as well. Whereas now we can look back every quarter and see what the individual officers were doing and what special events happened and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. I have to say, I've seen some of the photographs and it is hilarious seeing the sheer glee, satisfaction of some of the recipients of the plastic unicorn. And it's really wonderful. It just looks great. You mentioned also last time when we spoke about the Unsung Hero for the Year award. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so this is the second year we've done our annual reviews through Appraisd. And again, that has been a game changer for us. And I put a question in this year about the unsung hero, because I think there are many people in an organization who sing about what they do, and that's part of their personality or their nature. And then there's a lot of other people who don't necessarily sing about what they do, but also it might just be a function of what they do. Their role is more internal, or because of confidentiality, or related to HR, you can't sing about the things you're doing. And so I really wanted to hear from the team, who they thought had made a fantastic contribution to Illuminate over the last year, who potentially may not have been recognised in the way that other people had. And so it was really interesting because we got a great set of names and it was really quite varied and really interesting how people just couldn't actually choose. They sort of, some people said the whole organization, and other people said, I found this a really challenging question, but I would say these 3 people, but I think ultimately this person. what happened for us this year is our finance team came out like trumps, and everybody had kind of put them as the winners. And so we had first, second, and third, and two of those were the finance team. And so it was really nice because then we were able to do again an award ceremony, this time with different themed plastic ducks, and everybody this time people got a bottle of champagne, which was nice. But it was really lovely to share some of the feedback as well. So we did the presentation, and then we anonymized, but we put some of the great things that people had said about them, which was just absolutely lovely to hear, and such a nice way to recognize particularly a team who do a lot in the background, and some of it's not glorious, doing the audits and sort of a lot of the stuff that people just don't see.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And as with any kind of feedback, that the stuff that's really specific is what you really remember and what really hits home. So the commentary that goes alongside, you might have the most number of votes, but it's the narrative, isn't it, that goes alongside. It was the thing that you did then, or it was when I was struggling with this and you helped out, or whatever, and people really take that on board. It's really impactful, I think. So I agree. The narrative that goes along with it is so important.
I think making it memorable as well, because it's fun, and the points we have the two partners sort of dancing around the room, and you think, on what other occasion is that going to happen? And so there's lots of laughter and noise, and even we try and keep that up even though it's on Zoom. And we had a scenario recently where we've got summer interns at the moment, and one of them, their first meeting with the whole company was these awards, and we thought, gosh, like she's going to think we're absolutely mad.
I'm sure she thought it was fantastic. What a great welcome. That's amazing. That's really cool. Okay, now, how has this evolved over time? Have you obviously been creating it yourselves and figuring it out as you go along, driven by a lot of passion and energy and positive intentions. But, have there been any hurdles? Have you any challenges you've had to tackle?
Yeah, I think back to my point earlier, it definitely has to change. And we constantly discuss between us, should we do this? Should we do that? How do you make it easy for people? And how do you make sure that it stays current as you grow? And I think that there's a lot of challenges we have at the moment that are growth. We're sort of 23 people at the moment. And between the three geographies, and you're at that point where you start sort of stretching and things, outgrowing things. But we're super keen to keep this. And I think, some of the stuff we've changed a few things. We had a karma comedian at one point who sort of appeared for one of the awards and never again. So occasionally you thought about new awards, but we've never changed the original three, and the Numpty one's so popular. So I think that's probably going to stay the same now. But I think we've definitely had to think a bit more carefully about the bias in terms of those who recognise in the same way that you feed back and things. Some people are just naturally better at taking the time to recognize than others. And if you're not careful, you've got some people being recognized more than others purely through the teams they work with and the people around them. And so, we have to be cognizant of that. And sometimes, I might have to say like, oh, can I just check to a particular individual that you have, put forward your nominations, because otherwise the other person, might not kind of get recognized when they should. I think also just being sensitive to people not feeling left out, that of course the partners are sort of choosing as such. So it's not a democratic process in that way, but it's just making sure that it's fair, and we do think about that. And then we definitely have too many nominations. So sometimes we're having to combine things, and, if you get a fair few that are similar, then we're having to kind of tweak it slightly so that we can fit it all in. So it's definitely not an exact science, and it's definitely not perfect, but I think the sentiment is there and works. So I think it's it's here to stay. Excellent.
Sounds great. And I think that sounds totally fair and the right thing to do to have your sort of committee, I guess, that you have, you and the two partners.
Yeah, and I
where
guess
you,
ultimately I'm viewing it as well. So you've got three, and then one of our EAs is the one kind of putting it together. So I think between us as a group, you're trying to kind of make it fair and get the messages across that you want to.
Do you find that there are some people who are more, there are some people who might be less willing to receive recognition? I mean, I suppose if you deliver it in the right way, do you find there are some people who just don't want to be, I don't know, might find it embarrassing or be seen to be self-promoting or anything like that? I guess it sounds like you've got a very robust system to make sure that nobody could get that impression.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I mean, I hope not. I think because there's 4 awards and so many nominations, I think most people are in there for one reason or another, so it doesn't feel like you're being picked on or being center of attention, because I'm definitely one of those people. I hate being center of attention, and so I think because it's that team environment, I don't think we have nobody said that to me yet. I think I've definitely had one occasion where somebody said, oh, I was a bit upset to not be on nominated for that particular one, but I've never had it the other way around where somebody said oh, I don't really want to be, which I've definitely had that with birthday celebrations where people are like, I don't want to, don't get me a cake or don't make a fuss. So we haven't had that problem yet.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, and then just another question then on this visibility, and I suppose the finance team is a really good example, isn't it? Because you've got it's a function where if they're doing everything right, everything just goes really smoothly, and it enables people to close deals, and or something like that, and where typically the person who closed the deal would be the person who got that would be the great celebration, right? And this is how you're able to kind of pull out other people to the fore. I'm just wondering if there's anything else you use in Appraisd, whether the check-ins or the objectives and things like that help to kind of bring to the surface things that people are doing, achieving every day, perhaps, that might also be less visible than the big deal that comes in.
I mean, I'd start by saying one of our fundamental values is the no-star culture and the team. We have something Team Tiger, so we have some sort of animals, and Team Tiger is incredibly important to us. And I think one of the great things about recognition and giving, like gratitude, is actually for people who don't like to sing about their own wins. This is a nice way to do it, because you can actually give recognition to somebody else who worked with you on something that is kind of, bringing you into that as well. And I think some people find that a lot easier than going, oh, look at me, I did this today. But also when we do, I mean, working in VC, I think deals are the big thing, but when that happens, everyone's very aware that it's not just one person, in the same way we're fundraising at the moment, and it is such a team effort. And so I think Appraisd is great for it, and there's lots of different ways, because I think we're quite our company's quite independent in the way that people, like, sounds wrong to say that independent, because we're very collaborative, but we don't micromanage. So we give people, we say, look, it will empower you to own what you're doing and to run with it. And that kind of independence means that sometimes if you are more of an introvert, you might be doing a fantastic job, but it's not seen because you're not telling everyone about it. And so I think by using Appraisd, I think it's really helpful, because you've got the feedback function where other people can be feeding in, you've got the check-ins, the objectives, you've got these areas where that you sit down and you have these discussions, and people can be talking at the specifics of what they've been doing. And yes, their manager in the most part will be kind of aligned with what they're doing, but there we have secondary managers and they might not be, and also the other partners, it just enables them to kind of look in and think, oh, that's really interesting, I hadn't realized you'd done that. But we have a weekly call, and so much of that is people shouting out to say, I just want to thank this person for having done this week, or I want to, highlight that this happened this week. And that very much comes from the top, from the partners, and everybody who joins Illuminate. You see it from day one, and therefore it feeds through to everybody else. And it just, if you came in and didn't have that kind of those values, it would be very obvious quite quickly, because it's so much a part of what we do, and it all links to communication. So some people have to be better at communicating than others, especially if they're in different geographies. Singapore, there's only a team of 2 there, so they have to be so much better with their communication because of the visibility. And so it's kind of depends on where you sit in the organization, but Appraisd has definitely helped us a lot in this regard.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. And last question is, imagine you're working for another company and, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 people there. Is there any advice you would give them, or just someone listening, any advice you'd give them just on how to get started with a scheme like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a personal thing to your organization. So I think the first thing is to make sure it's authentic, because the risk is you could definitely see this as being forced fun or something like that if it didn't feel true to Illuminate values. And because it is a little bit silly, if people didn't believe in it, it just wouldn't work. So I think if you're thinking of doing something like this, you've got to really link it back to your values and saying, why are we doing this? What behaviors do we want? And why? The why is the most important thing.
Yeah. Okay. So authentically silly, I think, is what.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds about right.
In your case. Okay, but people got to find their own thing, right? You got to find what works within your own culture, and I think what the partners or the leaders are willing to really get behind and support, and that just sort of goes naturally with the culture.
Yeah, and people leave the room like they're feeling quite uplifted, and then what are they thinking about doing next? And they're thinking, actually, gosh, that was a great quarter, and like people did amazing things. What am I going to do next quarter, or who am I going to work with, and that kind of thing. So it's really uplifting.
Fantastic. Okay, well, listen, thank you so much for telling us a little bit more about what goes on at Illuminate Financial. I think it's really fascinating, and it's amazing to see also your commitment to iterating and keeping it working and trying different things to kind of get it. I can really see the company's passion for getting this right, and you obviously all really feel like this is really important and makes a difference. So I think that really comes across. So thank you so much, Rachel, for joining us. And if anyone wanted to ask you anything more about it, would you be willing to accept a LinkedIn message from?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't actually remember what my LinkedIn handle is. So.
Okay. I'm sure they can find you, Rachel Townend at Illuminate Financial. Okay, Rachel.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.